joining me as my guest for this hour, civil rights and trial attorney Christa Ramey. Christa, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, as always, Michael.
All right, so we've moved now from this phase where the plea deal was rejected by the judge. So, of course, Travis and Greg decide that they don't want to deal with that plea deal. And jury selection began today. Now, what are you expecting from jury selection? This is a very different trial. This is the trial where the jury in this case is going to hear everything that the jury in the state case couldn't hear regarding race and some of the racial texts and statements and different things. So what are prosecutors looking for in a juror in a case like this?
I think the prosecutors really want jurors that are well informed about this case, but they have to be careful. Federal court is a little different than state court when it comes to selecting a jury. Our viewers get a good look at the state court juries' selections often on court TV, where probing questions are asked by attorneys for both the defense and for the prosecution. That's not necessarily true in federal court. The judges do most of the questioning themselves. So the prosecution will be listening and paying attention to what's happening and probably don't want to dive too deep into some of the more racially charged questions, because they want to make sure that they have a well-informed jury that's not going to get excused for cause.
Now, when you talk about a well-informed jury, right, this whole fiasco with the plea deal, I think, created even more problems. We already knew it was going to be difficult to get a jury because of the publicity surrounding this case. Now you have a situation where the McMichaels say they want to plead to this particular charge, right, which is basically a hate crime, that they targeted Arbery because of his color. But then that gets rejected, and we still have to pick a jury. Is there any concern that that situation and all the publicity that surrounded that might further taint a jury?
Well, to the extent that it does, those jurors will get excused for cause. We saw that in the case of Derek Chauvin, where the settlement was reached with the city of Minneapolis before the trial began. And that was one of the grounds for which they were seeking the mistrial, because of all the publicity. And as it was, there was some jurors that did hear about the settlement, the giant settlement that was done in that case, and those jurors were let go. They were thanked and excused by the court. That is what will happen here. If it becomes something that the jury knows too much about, then those jurors will not remain on the jury, most likely, if it will affect their views, I should add.
All right, a couple of things I want to talk about this particular jury. First of all, today, reports coming from the courtroom are that 9 of a potential 25 that were called in today were dismissed in initial questioning. It's hard to know exactly why, but some things leaked out. Some of the reporters reported that a couple of them already had predisposed ideas about whether they were guilty or not, thinking that, in fact, they were guilty. One person actually knew Roddy Bryan for many years. So out of that first 25, only 16 are moving on to the next level. That's not terrible for a case like this, but I will say this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. The judge asked the question. She said, how many of you have never heard of this case? And of course, no one raised their hands. But what we're looking for is not folks who don't know about the case, but folks who haven't formed an opinion about the case, correct?
Exactly. You don't want someone coming into your jury trial that already has their mind made up. You want them to listen to the evidence and hear it the same as every juror in that courtroom at the same time and in the same manner, and not discuss or form an opinion until the case is being deliberated at the end of the case. So, yes, this is a very highly publicized case, and most people in the state of Georgia do know about it, I would imagine. But the level of knowing is going to be different from juror to juror, and it also will be different in terms of whether or not they've made up their mind. And you don't want those folks on your jury that have made up their mind.